Those of you that are seated way back there, if you can't see the screen, best if you move so you can see the screen. If you could turn the volume up a little bit. Gita values is our topic. And to give you a little background where this topic comes from. There's a group of devotees in the UK who over a couple of decades they developed a relationship with the religion department at Oxford University, and eventually Oxford University established a division within their religion department of Vaishnava studies. So today, someone can enroll at Oxford University, get an Oxford University degree in Vaishnava studies. Yay! So, that group of devotees, they call themselves the Oxford Project, in collaboration with some leaders within ISKCON, educators within ISKCON, they came up with something that's not specifically for the students at the university, but for the public to understand Bhagavad Gita. And one of the things they came up with, a real simplified rendering, is Gita value 6 in number, with a little paragraph that goes with it, and you probably have a copy. Anybody here not have a digital copy? You all have, that's pretty good. Okay. So we'll be following that, and by design, this series of 6 Gita values is a little different. It's more interactive and role play, different things like that. Activities together, that kind of education model. So be prepared. A little bit now, the role of values found in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and whatever Vedas in establishing spiritual culture, because you have probably heard Prabhupada say Krishna consciousness will be established in the world by a cultural revolution, or something like that. So, come on over here so you can see the screen. Walk over. You're good, but he's off here. So, spiritual culture doesn't just mean send your daughter to Bharatanatyam dancing school. That's part of culture, of course. But culture has a much deeper meaning, and I'm going to share something that comes from, at least it was introduced to me from somebody that's familiar with the corporate world. When there's kind of like a corporate changeover or takeover, one of the things that the new CEO administration likes to do is address the culture of the corporation. And they redefine it. So this is a diagram that comes from that source, but it applies to any group of people, an organization, a nation, a family, an individual even, and there's a culture within an individual and groups of individuals. So in the Hare Krishna group. So we have our culture, or our intended culture, and that's indicated in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam particularly. So the iceberg of culture shows three parts. There's the tip of the iceberg up there. That's, in cultural language, it's behaviors, measurable things. Things that you can perceive and you can measure, and that's part of culture. Part not to dancing. And, Hare Krishna dancing. Some people wonder, what do these people have for breakfast? And those behaviors are resting upon values. Values commonly means your official statements of your belief system, your mission statement, your core convictions, all those kinds of things. What's really important to you? That's a good question. What's really important to you? And the answer to that question is your values. That's what's really important to you. And there's a correlation between values and behaviors. One influences the other. And behaviors manifest values, and behaviors can help modify our values. And then, of course, the values are substantially much greater than the behaviors. Just like the tip of the iceberg is just the tip. And then down at the bottom of the iceberg, or the iceberg of culture, is assumptions. And this means unchangeable realities of life. Not circumstantial, doesn't come and go, like beliefs can come and go, behaviors can come and go, but the bottom of the iceberg is the core convictions, implicit, unchangeable realities. So let's say the Hare Krishna culture. From Bhagavad Gita, it's a value, but it's also a core conviction. We're spirit soul. As spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. As the part is meant to serve the whole, we're meant to serve Krishna. That's who we are. It's a who are you question, not what's important to you question. Who are you really question. So cultural engineering, it's called in the world, is to align these things. And they look at all three things. So we're going to look at primarily stated values, but we'll also be certainly looking at core assumptions and behaviors, artifact or measurable things. And spiritual culture means to align those three things. Know what they are and bring them into alignment, and you get a nice Hare Krishna devotee. Then if there's out of alignment, then there's some, it's uncomfortable. A few more things. Education today is largely information-oriented, not character development-oriented. Prabhupada taught real education is character development. And like, Gurukul, this and that, but what's really important is character development. Because where there's good character, then all good things follow. And where there's not good character, all bad things follow. Disturbances to the individual and to the nature and other people and other species around that individual that doesn't have character. Tell a little Prabhupada story. Prabhupada explained one time he was with a friend of his who was a wealthy industrialist type of fellow. And when Prabhupada was visiting with this man, it was simultaneously time to interview some individuals that would run one of his factories. so quickly. It's a longer version, but of the two, the first one that came had a smaller resume and wasn't as boastful, and he came, was interviewed, and then he left. The second one, it came, gigantic resume, very impressive, very articulate, and Prabhupada asked afterwards, which one did you select? Which one do you think you'll hire as the manager or director of your factory? And he said, the first one. And Prabhupada asked him, could you explain? So the businessman said, this is related to culture. The businessman said, the first person didn't have the same academic training and years of experience training and all that, but I felt this man is trainable, he's humble, he has good character, and he closed the door. The other fellow, big credential, but a little proud, and I thought it'd be more difficult to train this person, and he didn't close the door. Now, in America, close the door, don't close the door, what's the problem? But for a cultured person, it's part of respect. You make a sound before you enter a room. It means like go to the temple room, you ring the bell, or you make some, because the place is the place of the deity. So closing, so it's just part of culture. Prabhupada would insist that people close the door. And another little cultural example is in America, it's not observed outside of the courtroom, but in the courtroom, when the judge comes in, the clerk says, everyone rise, stand up. And if you don't stand up, you're put in jail. Because without respect of the judge, the whole system breaks down. So it's part of the system. Now, outside of the courtroom, but people who are cultured, my first experience of this was in a temple, walking past the reception desk, and somebody was at the reception desk, a young Indian person, and when I walked by, he stood up. I didn't make the connection. I thought maybe he was standing up for something else. And then it happened several times, and I asked him, what was that all about? And he said he was trained. Of course, in the morning, as Vaishnavas, we pay obeisances. But to anybody, not just a sannyasi, but a cultured person, when they're in a room, and in the room comes someone of a VIP status, or an elder, or something like that, you stand up. Or without elaborating. It's just it's an aspect of culture. Closing the door, standing when someone of respect and seniority comes into the room. It's part of this. So that's character. That's not just information. We have information. We're spirit, soul. How much do we function on that platform? So, in contrast, wisdom or knowledge, you act on that platform. The behavior is automatically there because it's realized. And jnana, big jnana. When there's realization or wisdom, then there's character, just like knowledge. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, one of the 6 questions at the beginning, Arjuna wants to know what's knowledge, jnanam, and game, the object of knowledge. And you read the verses, 8 through 12, we're touching on them during this presentation. Every one of them is equality. Because persons who have knowledge, not just information, but persons who have knowledge, they have quality, they have character. And there's a big difference between information and character, or knowledge, or wisdom. And one other thing on this point, I appreciate visiting China for many reasons, and one of them is they value they have culture, and they value very much traditional Chinese wisdom. I had to learn more about traditional Chinese wisdom. And when discussing it in public forums, people say, you know, when you're speaking about Bhagavad Gita, it sounds a lot like Chinese wisdom. I was asked to speak at a Zen center about Bhagavad Gita and Buddhism and how they compare. So wisdom is wisdom is wisdom. There's a lot of similarity. Now, how is wisdom applied? There's a big difference. What the purpose behind, which is part of the iceberg example. There's a value and then living your value, but what sustains and supports that value? What's the purpose of it? Bhagavad Gita teaches that the purpose of it is to know who you are. And knowing who you are is incomplete without knowing who is Krishna, because we're part of Krishna. And you keep going, you know, it's what's your eternal activity in relation with Krishna. So the value and the behavior align far more than information. So this is an exercise by design to help us go beyond information. These values are intended to help us go beyond information. I presented this is the 5th time that I've done this. So I'm learning a lot and appreciating the importance of, and the role and the function of values in spiritual culture. But when I presented it in China, all the exercises and things, it was all in Chinese. I didn't understand any of it. But I knew what the message was and the purpose was. And the idea is to help people who do appreciate wisdom to go beyond that which is outside of our reach. You know, the Confucius and Lao Tzu and all those elevated wisdom personalities. They're ideals to shoot for, but when there's no support of who are you really, it comes and it goes like the seasons, like the weather in Detroit. 80 degrees and 56 degrees, same day. So to go from information to wisdom, there's a big transition, big gap. Where we are, what we know, big gap. And for people who are engaged in cultural engineering within corporations or organizations or whatever, this term liminal is common in people that are, I don't know this from the corporate world, but I've been told from people who are. Liminal is a Latin word. I'm sure there's some connection with the Sanskrit term, but liminal in Latin means in between. Like, for example, there's a porch outside, and then there's a foyer inside, and in between the two there's a limen. That's that piece of wood that goes on the floor. That's a carpentry term, or an architectural term. And in a cultural engineering term, it's how to get to where we want to go. A place of transition. And anybody that knows about moving, or, I mean, I've had some communications of late with young people that are entering college their freshman year. One of them, their daughters, not with mother, but hearing from the daughters, whoa. Or people that move from this place to that place. Even move from this house to that house in the same city. There's in transition, there's some discomfort. What to speak of spiritual transition? If there's no discomfort, you're doing something wrong. If you're feeling discomfort, that's good. It shows you're doing something right. Quickly, don't take a long time. So, in our circle of devotees, in our community of devotees, we and those with whom we associate are very familiar with the territory of being uncomfortable. Great. Embrace it. It's wonderful. It's not just feels bad. It's an opportunity. This is connected with another seminar on overcoming negative emotion. We'll touch on it as we go further. Acceptance. But fortunately, Krishna is there, and that's for real. It's not just notional. We can experience the Krishna connection in that transition. It's like, a child growing up, holding the hand of mother or father, or their dear friends, assuming they're friends of good character. Then, that's reassuring. We all need friends. We all need good mentors and guides and good parents. And that's what good, wholesome communities are. So that helps us make this liminal transition better, or more reassuring. And so this is last little introductory piece. Be prepared. Listen with the understanding on the final session. You don't have to, but it's an application homework kind of exercise. That is, you'll be asked, so you can take notes or think or whatever, how when we're all done you're going to apply this. Uh-oh, homework. Because information that isn't applied, no transformation. So we want to apply in a way that's reasonable for each one of us. So that's be on the alert. And listen accordingly. Literally going to request, make a written little set of action items for each one of these 6 values. So it's important to remember how the values fits into spiritual culture. Okay, that was all the preamble. Now comes the Gita value number 1, Sama Darshanaha. Some of our younger people here. Does anybody know the verse? Younger people? Vidyavanaya Sampane. The younger persons. Do you know the verse? You know the verse? You're not a younger person.
Brahmin sees with equal vision with cow, dog, man, dog, bird.
Something like that, yeah. Okay, so that's where this comes from. And then, in the digital version, maybe we can print some handout ones if you want. There's a little paragraph from the Oxford Project folks, along in collaboration with some of our ISKCON educators. Don't pass them out now, if they're distracted. You have some? No, just close them. Okay. So, in this world, there's variety. There's varieties of fruits, there's varieties of little bugs and insects and crawling creatures, varieties of birds, varieties of fish, varieties of animals, and more varieties of animals. So many differences. And even within the human species, so many differences of culture and language and color and this and that. So many different nations and flags, so many differences. So many differences. And amongst the humans, so many different ways of how people respond to the same thing because of their modes of nature and so forth. So now comes the big question. Because of these different life forms and different people and different situations, different exchanges, how are we to see with equal vision? Well, Bhagavad Gita has an answer. You'll see this image several times. Down here is a key, and up there is a heart, or a lock, in the shape of a heart. And keys are meant to open locks, especially if they fit. So there's a key to open the Samadarshana principle. Gita's idea of equal vision speaks of the equality of all living beings, where life is respected regardless of race, gender, caste, creed, or species. Now, I believe this is taken directly from that paragraph from the Oxford Project people. In the secular world today, discrimination has a bad connotation. Generally it means you discriminate against people that are different. From the Bhagavad Gita perspective, it's a function of intelligence, but without the negative connotation. To see there are differences, that's what intelligence does. An IQ test, that's what it does. Can you distinguish this from that? That's a function of intelligence. There's the wholesome and there's the unwholesome function of everything. And so regardless of race, gender, caste, creed, or species, recognizing differences, there's some equality. Now, what's the basis of that equality? What is it that we have in common? So this is an image taken from the BBT production on summarizing Bhagavad Gita, a little video clip that they made. So there's the evolution diorama depicted in the painting, and what's similar is those spark of life, the soul within all these different species and so many sparks. And that which is common is there's an unchanging spiritual energy within each living entity. With all the differences, we're all spirit souls. Again, the image on the right, the BBT painting. So much variety, but that was what's common. And this spirit soul, Bhagavad Gita teaches, we all know, is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, Satchitananda. So while we're in this human form of life, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Cute photograph. They liked it in China. Okay, so now we're going to have some exercise facilitation. And Uma, I twisted her arm and she said, ouch, and said, okay. I'll do it.
So this is the first of many of our exercises that's going to help us go from information to transformation. So I'd like to request everyone to get in a comfortable sitting posture, sitting upright. And you can close your eyes. And I'm going to request you to start taking some deep breaths in and out at your own pace. And now, with your inner senses, bring your awareness to your feet. And slowly move that awareness up to your legs. And then your thighs. Move up to your stomach area. Your back. And then your chest. Your arms. Your fingers. And now move your awareness to your face. And finally your head. This is your body. However, you are not the body. You're not your mind either. You're not even your thoughts or emotions. At this time, try to be present with yourself. Take a slow, deep breath and come and sit within your heart. And recognize that you are a spirit soul. You are a spirit soul and you are connected to divine grace. Now within this space, we will chant the Hare Krishna mantra together in unison, slowly. Let us begin. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
now back to the professor bit. The soul, which is so powerful, pervades and gives life to the gross and subtle body. And that soul is very, very, very tiny. From Svetashvatara Upanishad, when the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of such parts is divided further into 100 parts. Each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. There's scientists who have, devotee scientists, it's smaller than an angstrom unit. Smaller than the smallest measurable anything of the material world, yet that tiny spark, same size, animating the body of a big elephant or a little small squirrel. And that's what we learned from Bhagavad Gita. That's this Samadarshana. From the same chapter 5, that Samadarshana verse appears. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a type of ear and eye and tongue and nose and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. But of course, we're not the body. We're not the senses of the body. Then in the human form of life, so much variety of senses and sense objects, and trying to be the enjoyer of all those things. Even in different bodies, every living entity is an amazing spirit soul. That's who we really are. But the consciousness of all living entities is covered by the illusory energy we find in chapter 3 Bhagavad Gita. The coverings are compared from the modes of nature, mode of ignorance. Covering is compared to the living entity within the womb of a mother. That's one type of covering. And like a tree, there's also a living entity that has a covering. Lower in the evolutionary scale, then the animal kingdoms, it's the mode of passion. Consciousness is covered compared to a mirror covered by dust. And fire covered by smoke. Not everybody's in the mode of goodness either. But the modes of nature cover the living entity, the pure consciousness of the living entity. That's of course our understanding from Bhagavad Gita. Therefore the verse, the humble sage, sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision. A learned and gentle Brahmana, that's that fellow, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and somebody you don't want to meet in a dark alley. Doesn't look like a friendly person. But, spirit soul. And so we conduct ourselves differently, appropriate for the differences of the coverings, while at the same time that the value of Bhagavad Gita is to see equally. That requires intelligence, spiritual intelligence. So you can see differences, that's material intelligence, and spiritual intelligence is to see the same, that Samadarshana. This vision awards personhood to all, links everyone with the divine grace. That language was for China, because we can't say that other word. And consequently with each other. Equal vision begins with seeing ourselves as what we are and seeing other living entities for who or what they are. And this Samadarshan of value connects with the other values. It's a teaching, it's where Bhagavad Gita teaching begins. Because, Arjuna's question is, what's my duty? And Krishna goes, well, before we talk about duty, let's talk about who you are. Then we'll talk about duty. So without having the value of Samadarshan, it's pretty hard to have the other values. It's cosmetic at best. Good intention at best. Not sustainable for sure. If you don't know who you are. That's the bottom of the iceberg. That helps sustain and support the value. The value helps get to understanding who you are. The behaviors and the values help you get to that objective. But, we're covered, and that's been explained here. So we want to address the covering by true knowledge. We'll carry on with the true knowledge yet. Well, I'll comment. No problem hearing it again and again. Arjuna was in big time distress. It's a little background. This presentation in China was done following a prior workshop. There was workshop number 3. Workshop number 1 was in China today, there's a growing interest in meditation. In America today, there's a growing interest in meditation. So some seminars on the art of meditation have been created. This afternoon I'm going to be presenting in Grand Rapids the art of meditation part 2. Part 1 is like how you do it. Part 2 is when you do it, you can overcome negative emotion, because in China today, in America today, and in the world today, it's a growing industry, is depression and negative emotion. It's an industry. I mean, I'm using the word because people in medical fields say it's the fastest growing field in medicine today is dealing with negative emotion, in pharmaceuticals and, not just psychologists, doctors, but medical doctors. It's on the rise without statistics. China's statistics. China government really filters everything, but I forget the number. Gigantic number of people who are acknowledged by the Chinese government as clinically depressed, or to speak of everybody else. And it's a huge number. And it just mirrors what's going on here. The government situation is different, obviously, but the behavior, the patterns are quite similar. When I was doing this overcoming negative emotion, the place where I was, the person who was organizing, worked for a big corporation. One of their executives jumped out of the 7th floor office building and splattered on the sidewalk below. Suicide in the midst of all of this. And it's not uncommon. Drug overdose, accidental drug overdose, and so forth and so on. It's like, it's not just, without naming names, celebrities that do that, it's people do that. Etc., etc., etc. So, the art of meditation, overcoming negative emotion. It was much appreciated, and then we wanted to get those people into Bhagavad Gita. So if the part I didn't show you was the negative emotion that Bhagavad Gita shows, and how Arjuna went beyond the negative emotions through knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So let's go to Bhagavad Gita, Gita values. That was the bridge. So, knowing who you really are gives relief from suffering. Because the Vedas teach the root cause of suffering is ignorance. Buddhism teaches differently. The root cause of suffering is desire. If you want to become free from suffering, get out a dagger and kill yourself. Just stop desiring, which is equivalent to spiritual suicide, nihilism. But you can't. The soul can't be annihilated. But Buddha doesn't teach that. Just stop desire. So it's equivalent to anesthetizing the soul. So when you're under anesthesia, where's consciousness? Well, it's in this suspended state because it's anesthetized. And during anesthesia, you don't feel anything. No physical pain, no emotional pain, no feeling until the anesthesia wears off. Just listening to Prabhupada explain this in a class in Los Angeles, chapter 2, towards the end. Specifically saying, Buddha's teaching is nirvana, but he didn't use the word anesthesia, but it's temporary because it's like, he used the example, if we say, leave the room. This is a place of suffering, leave the room. You gotta go somewhere. You gotta go to another room. Or somewhere. You can't just like go out of existence. It's not real. You don't go out of existence, the soul. So it's a temporary relief of suffering, but it's not a permanent situation. Unless you realize who you really are, it's not a permanent situation. It's incomplete, whatever it is. So this Samadarshana principle or value rests upon a Bhagavad Gita understanding, but it's something that we should live our life by. And dear devotees, when you think about an action item for each one of the 6 values, think about an action item that you can, in practical, little incremental way, apply the principle. Besides information, no transformation. It's a challenge, but it's a worthy challenge. Okay, so we're ready for our facilitator now. I'm the professor and she's the one who's going to teach her. Because it's got to be practical. You don't need this?
Unless everyone else needs to see it. I have
Okay.
So now we're going to engage in a very personal exercise. Before I get into it, does everyone have something to write on and write with? If you don't, I have, you can use your phones if you're comfortable too, but I have some paper and pens if anybody needs.
She's prepared.
So, does anybody, you have to raise your hand if you would like.
Right over there?
Oh, hi.
Can somebody assist her?
You take a few. Thanks, Miranda.
Raise your hand if you want a paper and a pen.
Oh yeah, there's plenty. There's like, you can even give extra so that they have something to lean on, or you can put it on the floor, I guess.
You may want to keep these pieces of paper over the period of 6 days to refresh yourself.
Okay. So I'd like everyone to take a few minutes and think about a challenging time that you've had in the past where you felt that you couldn't see another individual or individuals with equal vision. So a difficult situation that you were in and there were others involved and you couldn't see them with equal vision. So take a few minutes to deeply think about a circumstance like this, and you can make a note of it. As you write, describe the incident, what happened, and very importantly, describe how you felt. What were your feelings? What were your emotions? How did you feel towards that other person or persons? What was your experience like in that challenging situation? If you look up, I'll know that you're sort of wrapping up your thought process. And now, as you're thinking about this incident, this situation, and feel free to close your eyes if you need to be able to stay focused. Consider that this person is also a spirit soul. Regardless of how they may have behaved in that situation, they are also a spirit soul. So equal vision begins with understanding who we really are, and then understanding who other people are. So think of yourself as a spirit soul, and also think of the other person as a spirit soul. And as you stay in this space, we're going to do a short kirtan together. So while we do this kirtan, try to stay in that space of meditating on the situation and considering that despite whatever this person or persons have done, they are spirit souls. deeply thinking ourselves as spirit souls as well as the other people. Let us chant together, everybody. So after we engage in this meditation, I'd like you to take a few minutes to write down how your feelings changed towards this person in the situation that you were meditating on. So take a few minutes to write that down. So this is something for you all to keep with yourselves, and I want to mention that, as Maharaj was saying, we want to go from information to transformation, and we want to walk away with very solid application, things that we can take away in our lives and practice. And this exercise is something like that, actually. This is one example. We can do this at any time in our lives. We can, take a pen and paper, sit down, and just the same exercise, carry it out. And we're going to end with another application exercise. For this exercise, I'd like to request everyone to pair up with someone. It's ideal if it's just one other person, but if for some reason you need to be in a group of 3, that would be okay. But if you could just find one other person and pair up with them and sit with them. I won't be available, so you probably have to find something else.
What are they going to do?
There's also Shubrama.
What are they going to do?
We're going to engage, so what we're going to do is, this is a holistic being exercise, and this exercise is based on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings, actually. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains that for us to better understand another person, to deeply understand other people, if we first understood that this other individual has very similar experiences like ourselves, then it can help us to deeply connect with that other person better. So this exercise is based on this teaching from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And so we're going to pair up and we're going to go through a meditation together with your partner. I'm going to speak you through this exercise. It looks like there's a group of 3 there, and there are 3 of you here. So
Please look at.
she said it's ideal if it's 2. It'll really work well if it's just 2 people. So I request you to pair up and with your partner sit face to face. So face each other. So sit in a comfortable upright position facing your partner. And now,
Is there another group of 3?
oh there, yeah, I can see 3 people over.
So we have 1 person. You could feel probably be 3 because laying on top, 3 together.
Okay. Am I loud enough in the back there? I can't even
Yes.
see everyone.
Yes.
Okay. There's a few now. So now, I request you to begin contemplating the soul within the other person. See their soul. And as you contemplate this, consider the following meditations. They have hopes. They have dreams. They have desires, just like I do. They have sometimes been disappointed by life. They've sometimes been hurt by other people. They've sometimes felt rejected or confused, just like I have. This devotee desires to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be content and joyful, just like I do. This devotee has a deep need for love, for acceptance, to be appreciated, to be cared for, and to care for others, just like I do. They've been hurt, just like I've been hurt sometimes. They've made mistakes before. They've been confused before, just like I have in the past. They desire to be happy, to be fulfilled, just like I do. Now take a moment to reflect upon these likenesses between yourselves, remembering that we are the spirit souls. Contemplate that all these likenesses are resting upon the soul within.
thank you very much. Some concluding remarks, and I think we'll wrap up. Go back to the iceberg. Let's go back. The role of values. We've been speaking Gita values number 1, Samadarshana. A value is what we say is important, something we believe in, something that's meaningful to us. Then there's behaviors. We wish behaviors to be consistent with our values. I'll give a little example. In education, in parenting, there's some parents here, or in education, we're educators, to teach a child to say please and thank you is different than inculcating a sense of gratitude in the child. It's a whole other thing. Because when you're gone, mom and dad are gone, the kid's grown up and now they're a young adult, the please and thank you may stay or may not stay, but if gratitude is there, it'll stay. And it's not just words, it's something that you feel, because you feel grateful, and behavior flows from that. So values are really important, but what sustains over long periods of time in our lives or in the organization that we're part of, or the communities that we're involved in, or the world that we're involved in, it's resting upon a spiritual conception of who we really are. So the value is not something that's in and of itself a goal. It's something that we value and it's important to us, but there's a higher or deeper goal, and that's to know who we are and to live according to who we really are, because conditioned life, that's missing. So to grow in Krishna consciousness, recognizing that value, and so you're going to be asked on the final day, if you're still with us, to make a little action plan to work on this value of Samadarshana. But it's a value resting upon the conception of who we really are, and then some behavior that you can pay attention to. But it's all, the aligning of these things is going to help us individually and collectively advance in Krishna consciousness, or achieve that which Bhagavad Gita wants us to achieve, and which we would like to impact the world around us to some degree. But you can do that according to your Krishna consciousness. You can impact the world in Krishna consciousness according to your Krishna consciousness, not just the behaviors, or just that you have value. So that's my thoughts on, again, this is the 5th time I've done this, and anybody that's, when you read Bhagavad Gita a number of times, you find things in Bhagavad Gita you didn't know were there the first few times you read it. It's just, that's the kind of literature it is. And teaching this has taught me a lot about how important this is. So I'm kind of energized on how important it is. And it's not easy to pick up on it, first time around. It's easier the 5th time around. So application, it will help to take the digital version of these Gita values, look over it, look over your notes, contemplate, think of an action plan, just stay with it for a bit, so that, individually and as a little community here, we can grow in Krishna consciousness and impact the people that we come in contact with better. and handle situations better, based upon our Krishna consciousness, within the family, within the community, within the world. So it's 9:25, and the bell rings at 9:30. We can ring the bell early. Is there any comments or questions or something somebody would like to bring up in the next few minutes? Yeah.
Thanks for a nice lecture. How can we see at the soul level? Because when it's, for example, I came from a remote village, so at our home there are a lot of snakes will come.
A lot of
Snakes.
snakes.
So when we see as a body and we scared. To
Yeah.
protect us, we are trying to kill the snakes. So how can we see in this case equal vision?
Well, that comes next one. That's nonviolence. Thank you for the lead-in. Now, you want to hear a little Prabhupada story in response to your question? And then we're going to end. Go one more second. So, Prabhupada told the story that when he was visiting in the Chaitanya Mat, which was Bhaktisiddhanta's headquarters. Have you been there? Mayapur? No? So one day when you go to Mayapur, you'll see Chaitanya Mat. There's a big boundary wall around it, and there's a house way over there. That's where Bhaktisiddhanta resided, and Gandharvika Giridhari, and many nice things there. The samadhi of Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta installed the samadhi there, and so on. So Prabhupada was visiting, and it was in the evening hour, it wasn't dark yet, and there were a group of excited Bengali men screaming, so he went over to see what was going on. There was a snake, and Bhaktisiddhanta heard the noise, and he came to the balcony of his place, and he said, "Kill it." So they killed it. And Prabhupada said, I was thinking, he's a sadhu, why is he saying kill it? Because you're supposed to be, non-violent. And then, Prabhupada said, later he read where Prahlad Maharaj said about his father that people become joyful when a scorpion or a serpent is killed. Because the nature of a scorpion or serpent, not just they're venomous, but unprovoked, they'll attack. So when such an entity is killed, saintly people celebrate. Maybe you've had this experience that I've had, when there's this storytelling from Krishna book, and Krishna kills a demon, everyone goes, Haribo! I'm thinking, what kind of culture is this? And it's universal, like Haribo! There's a scriptural explanation behind it. So Prabhupada, then his heart became pacified. So, there are serpents that are not venomous. And they're not to be killed. But supposing someone doesn't know the difference between the venomous and non-venomous, as soon as they see a serpent anyway, yeah, venomous or not venomous. So, in a village, you need to know. You really need to know. And then you need also to know what happens if there is a bite, what to do. So there's mantras and there's things to do with that happens. But snakes in a village, it requires knowledge. And of what's venomous and a not venomous snake. And so a child may be, but the example that Prabhupada gives is the serpent that has his fangs broken is not a fearful serpent. Now somebody may be fearful not even knowing the fangs have been removed and thinking, serpent, snake. I know somebody that's afraid of spiders. I know another person that's afraid of lizards. It's like, this person has a very severe, very well-educated person, very severe fear of lizards. He hasn't come out of his room for over a decade because he might see a lizard. It's real. No, fear is rooted in ignorance. If one has knowledge, then you know what to do with it. You don't go embrace it. Sama darshana, you don't go embrace a tiger, although you see with equal vision. Your behavior is appropriate for the tiger, etc. The dog and the dog eater, your behavior is appropriate. But that's when you have knowledge, material and spiritual. And without it, there's fear. And then there's this space between where we are and its cultivation of acting in knowledge. When you act in knowledge, faith increases. That's another question. How can faith in all of this by acting on it? Because when you act in knowledge, you get some realization. You get some realization. Your faith is nourished. And the source where you heard that information from, the information application leads to a realization, the increasing of faith. That's our procedure. We hear from the right source those things that make sense. We apply those things that make sense, consistently apply, and you get some realization, your faith increases. Then you can overcome fear. And just seeing with material discrimination without the spiritual discrimination. It's easier said than done. But it's doable. No? Okay, 9:30. Bells ringing. Prashadam. Thank you very much.
So the schedule today is, today there are 2 lectures on overcoming negative emotions, one at 12 and one at 5, 12 to 2 and 5 to 7, both in Grand Rapids. 2 hours drive, carpool is available, encouraged, so that's today. And this series continues tomorrow again. Tomorrow morning 8 o'clock, same place right here. And this Gita Wednesday is
I was told, Rasamita, what time? It's now going to be 12:30 instead of 12. That's latest.
He just asked us to come half hour for people to come.
12:30 to 2:30.
12:30.